Okay, let's unpack this. So you've got this dream bubbling up. Maybe it's owning your own business, escaping the corporate grind, being in charge of your own destiny.
A very common dream.
And for a lot of people, that dream takes the shape of a franchise. You picture plugging into an established system, getting that brand recognition, maybe leveraging collective buying power.
Right. It seems like a shortcut almost, a ready-made business.
It's genuinely exciting, the idea of hitting the ground running with a proven model. But here's where our deep dive really gets interesting. Turning that possibility into reality isn't just about falling in love with a brand or a product.
Not at all.
It's about rolling up your sleeves and conducting a serious, critical investigation before you even think about signing on the dotted line.
Absolutely. This deep dive is singularly focused on that crucial investigation process.
Yeah.
It's the difference between finding a potential business and identifying the right business, and maybe more importantly, the right system and a partner that is truly a fit for you.
It's a huge decision.
Deciding to invest in a franchise is a monumental step, both financially and, well, professionally. It impacts everything.
And the map for our deep dive today comes from George Knauf, who's a franchise consultant. Now, it's really vital to understand his perspective isn't that of a salesperson trying to, place you into a specific brand.
That's a key distinction.
The guide he's provided is about the process itself, how to objectively research, analyze, and ultimately figure out if a franchise is the right fit. It's about facilitating a potential match, or maybe just confirming there isn't one, through really rigorous due diligence.
That framework of objective process is absolutely key. He grounds the entire approach in careful investigation, fact-gathering, and analysis, emphasizing that you need to evaluate opportunities against your own specific needs and goals.
So it moves away from the shiny brochures.
Exactly. It moves the conversation away from just the glossy marketing materials and towards a structured, analytical assessment. You need to look under the hood.
So our mission here is to crack open this guide, walk through each recommended step, and extract the absolute essential knowledge you need to navigate the franchise investigation maze effectively.
We want you to gain clarity, build confidence.
And crucially, avoid potentially costly mistakes.
Yeah.
We're going to explore a methodical, almost detective-like approach, uncovering surprising insights like the powerful concept of mutual elimination.
Which we'll definitely get into.
And exactly why talking to current franchisees, including maybe the unhappy ones, is perhaps the most critical part of your research.
It's a structured path designed to lead you to a genuinely informed decision point, minimizing guesswork and maximizing your understanding of the reality of the opportunity.
All right, before you even start looking at a single franchise brochure or website, the source material highlights a foundational step that's actually about looking inward.
That's right. The guide points out that the investigation process begins before you engage with any specific franchisor. You should have already completed a thorough self-evaluation. The goal is to construct a personal model of what you genuinely desire and need in a business opportunity.
Why is building this personal model so critical before you start evaluating, external opportunities?
Because it provides your compass, your measuring stick. You need clear criteria against which to judge every potential franchise. What are your non-negotiables? What kind of work environment do you thrive in?
Right.
What specific tasks do you enjoy or actively dislike? What level of income do you require? And what are your long-term financial goals? What does your ideal work-life balance look like?
Really fundamental questions.
What are your core strengths and where do you need support? What is your personal tolerance for risk? Without answering these questions for yourself, any franchise can look appealing on the surface, but you won't know if it aligns with your fundamental needs and aspirations.
So you're defining success for you first before trying to find a business that fits that definition.
Precisely. It's about knowing your why, your what, and your how from a personal perspective. The guide emphasizes that you won't know if a franchise fits perfectly into your plans unless you've clearly defined what those plans actually are.
Yeah, makes sense.
This internal work prevents you from falling for a concept just because it sounds good or is popular, and instead focuses your search on opportunities that have a higher probability of aligning with your personal definition of fulfillment and success.
That makes perfect sense. If you don't know what you're looking for, you won't know when you find it, or worse, you might pick something that's completely wrong.
Oh.
The guide also mentions another factor to consider in this initial phase, the variance in a franchise company's track record.
Yes, and this is a really significant point that needs careful consideration. Not all franchise systems are created equal in terms of their history and development.
Right. Some are brand new, some have been around forever.
Exactly. Some might be emerging brands with just a handful of locations open for a short time. Others could be mature systems with decades of history and hundreds, maybe even thousands, of operating units. The guide explicitly states that this variance in track record needs to be a big, important factor in your final decision.
What specifically does that track record imply?
Yeah.
What should you be looking for beyond just, like, the founding date?
It's about the depth and consistency of their operational history. Look at the number of units opened over time. Is it steady growth or is it more boom and bust?
Oh,
How long have the existing units been open on average? Are there significant periods where no new units opened? Has the franchisor iterated and improved their model over the years based on franchise feedback and market changes?
So it's about stability.
It's about stability and evidence of refinement. A system with a long history, a large, stable network of existing franchisees, and a clear pattern of sustained operation can offer more data points for your investigation and potentially indicate a more robust, time-tested system.
Right. They've likely weathered some storms.
Exactly. It suggests they've navigated challenges and refined their model. Conversely, a very new system carries different risks. While potentially exciting, there are fewer existing franchisees to talk to, less historical performance data, and perhaps a less refined operational model. Understanding this variance is vital because it speaks directly to the franchisor's experience level, the system's maturity, and its demonstrated ability to perform consistently over time.
So assessing their history isn't just a formality. It's about understanding the stability and, well, the proven nature of the system you might join. Okay, you've done the essential internal work, defined your personal model, and understand the importance of a franchisor's track record. Now, how do you actually bridge the gap between knowing what you want and determining if a specific company delivers it?
Right.
This is where the core philosophy of the investigation process comes into play.
Right, and this is the concept the guide introduces as the process of mutual elimination.
Mutual elimination.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit like a competitive sport or maybe a dating process where everyone has veto power.
That's not a bad analogy, actually. The guide emphasizes it's not just you, the prospective franchisee, investigating the franchisor. The franchisor is also thoroughly investigating you.
Okay.
It is inherently a two-way street. The mutual aspect is non-negotiable.
And the elimination part, what does that mean exactly?
That acknowledges the reality that finding a truly perfect fit where your personal model aligns completely with a specific franchise system's offering, culture, and requirements is, as the guide puts it, highly unlikely with the very first company you look at.
So you probably won't hit a home run on the first try.
Probably not. The process is designed for both parties to look for reasons why it isn't a good fit, just as much as looking for reasons why it is.
So it's about actively trying to find the disqualifying factors, looking for red flags and deal breakers almost.
Precisely, because committing to the wrong franchise system is far more detrimental. I mean, just think about the cost.
Yeah.
It's far more detrimental than simply saying no to one that isn't the right match.
Yeah, financially and emotionally.
Exactly. It costs significant time, capital, and emotional energy. The structured process allows both you and the franchisor to progressively share and evaluate more detailed information about each other at each stage.
And I imagine using a consultant, like the source author does, helps refine the initial pool of potential companies, so you're not starting from scratch with completely unsuitable options.
That's correct. The guide mentions that working with a consultant can help you identify opportunities that potentially align with your personal model and interests, thereby, potentially reducing the number of companies you need to investigate initially.
But it's not a guarantee.
Absolutely not. It's crucial to understand that this is just the starting point. The full investigation process is still absolutely essential to validate that initial potential alignment and ensure it's a genuine fit for both sides.
Right.
The consultant's role, as George Knauf sees it, is to guide your process and help you identify suitable candidates for investigation, not to guarantee a fit or, importantly, make performance claims.
So it's a staged process, increasing in commitment and detail as you move forward.
Exactly. Each step requires more time and effort, but yields a deeper understanding of the other party. You continue this progression until you reach a point where both sides have sufficient information to make an informed business decision.
Okay.
And a key element of this mutual elimination process is the out clause at any stage. If, after reviewing information at any step, either you or the franchisor determines it's not a match, you simply inform the other party and move on.
Which sound incredibly efficient and respectful of everyone's time when you frame it as mutual elimination. It's not a failure. It's the process working as intended to avoid a forced or poor fit.
Exactly. It's about finding alignment, and if it's not there, recognizing that fact early is a success in itself. Saves everyone a lot of grief down the road.
Okay, with that foundational understanding of mutual elimination in mind, let's dive into the specific steps of this investigation process outlined in the guide. Where do you begin this structured journey?
Step 1 is gathering general information. This is the initial sort of high-level exchange. The process typically starts with the franchisor providing you with introductory overview information about their company, their brand, their business concept.
It's like a brochure or something.
Yeah, it might be a brochure, a brief presentation, or maybe access to a preliminary website portal. Just the basics.
And then the ball comes back to the prospective franchisee. You have to provide info too.
Yes. You'll typically be asked to provide initial information about yourself. This often involves completing a questionnaire or providing details about your background, business experience, skills, and importantly, your financial qualifications.
The money part comes up early.
Well, the franchisor needs to quickly ascertain if you meet their basic candidate profile and, yes, their minimum financial requirements. They don't want to waste time either.
What's the primary goal of this initial back and forth then? Just checking boxes.
It's essentially a quick screening for basic compatibility and interest. Both parties are trying to determine if there's enough of a potential overlap in characteristics and goals to warrant investing more significant time and resources in deeper investigation.
Like a first date almost.
Kind of. It's a low-commitment way to see if there's a pulse before committing to a full diagnostic, you could say.
So if things look promising after this initial exchange, you move forward.
Precisely. Assuming both you and the franchisor remain interested after this preliminary step, you progress to the next stage, which involves receiving the single most important document in the entire process.
Okay, which brings us to step 2, delving into the franchise disclosure document, or the FDD.
Yes, the guide refers to this as the FTC mandated disclosure document. It's a legal requirement under the Federal Trade Commission's franchise rule that franchisors must provide this document to prospective franchisees well in advance of any agreement being signed.
And the guide calls it a wealth of information. Sounds substantial.
It truly is. The FDD is designed to give you a comprehensive look at the franchisor, the franchise system, and the terms of the relationship. A key advantage, highlighted in the source, is that the FDD follows a standard format composed of 23 specific items.
Oh, so they're all structured the same way?
Generally, yes. This standardization is incredibly valuable because it allows you to compare different franchise opportunities on a reasonably level playing field across these defined areas. You can compare item 7 from one FDD to item 7 from another.
Okay, let's really unpack the FDD. For our audience who knows the basics but wants the deep dive perspective, what are the key items, and more importantly, what should you be looking for within them? The source lists major subject areas. First, the history of the franchise, officers and directors. What's the depth here? What are we looking for?
Right. Beyond just names and dates, you're looking for stability and relevant experience. What is the background of the key executives listed? Do they have deep experience in the specific industry or, importantly, in franchising itself? Have the leadership personnel changed frequently? High turnover at the executive level can sometimes be a red flag, you know?
Yeah, instability at the top isn't great.
Exactly. Also, look at the franchise's history. Has it evolved significantly? Have there been major changes in the business model? Understanding the background of the people leading the system and the history of the system itself gives you insight into the stability and expertise at the top.
Item 2, description of the business. Sounds straightforward, but what's key here?
This goes beyond the marketing pitch. It details the actual business operations, the specific goods or services, the target customers, the typical location requirements, the hours of operation, the general structure of the business model.
So the nitty-gritty.
Yes. You're evaluating if the day-to-day reality described aligns with the kind of work you want to do, as outlined in your personal model back in step 0? Does it sound like something you can see yourself doing and being passionate about over the long term? Are the requirements realistic for your lifestyle and capabilities?
Then, the crucial item 7, costs and fees. This is where the rubber meets the road financially, I imagine.
Absolutely critical. This item provides a detailed breakdown of the estimated initial investment. And this isn't just the upfront franchise fee, it includes a range for everything.
A range. Why a range?
Well, costs can vary based on location, size of the unit, local labor costs, things like that. So it includes estimates for real estate or leasehold improvements, equipment, initial inventory, signage, grand opening marketing, business licenses, insurance, and crucially, an estimate for initial working capital.
Working capital. Money to burn before you make money.
Essentially, yes. The money you'll need to keep the business afloat before revenue covers expenses. You need to scrutinize this range and understand what factors drive the high and low ends.
Okay.
Beyond the initial costs, it details the ongoing fees. Royalties, usually a percentage of gross sales, paid weekly or monthly marketing fund contributions, often a separate percentage or flat fee, and any other recurring or occasional fees like technology fees, training refreshers, or transfer fees if you sell.
Lots of fees.
It adds up. Compare this directly to the financial requirements you identified in your personal model. Can you really afford the estimated total investment? Are the ongoing fees reasonable relative to the potential revenue? Are there any mandatory fees that seem unusually high or lack clear benefit?
Okay, item 8. Obligations of either party. What are we looking at here?
This lays out the specific duties and responsibilities of both you and the franchisor. What training will they provide? How long is it? Where is it? What specific types of ongoing support are they obligated to offer, like site selection assistance, marketing support, operational guidance, technology access?
And what about your side?
Right. On your side, it details your obligations, things like adherence to brand standards, participation in marketing programs, required purchases from approved suppliers, reporting requirements, payment terms for all those fees we just talked about.
So it spells out the give and take.
Exactly. You need to understand the level of support you can expect and the degree of control and compliance the franchisor requires. Does this balance align with your expectations for autonomy and support? Is it too restrictive or not supportive enough?
Item 3. Relevant litigation history. This can be a significant red flag area, right?
Right.
What are you looking for here specifically?
This item discloses past and current legal proceedings involving the franchisor or its executives. You're not just looking for any lawsuit, but patterns and types of litigation that might signal systemic issues.
Like what kind of patterns?
Are there numerous lawsuits brought by franchisees against the franchisor? That's a big one. What are the common complaints, disputes over royalties, marketing fund usage, alleged lack of support, or even wrongful termination? Yeah. Are there lawsuits related to labor practices or wage and hour disputes across multiple locations? That might suggest potential operational challenges baked into the system. While some level of litigation might be unavoidable for a large company, a pattern of recurring issues, especially those involving disputes with franchisees, is a major red flag. It requires deeper investigation during your franchisee validation calls later.
It tells you about the relationship health.
It can reveal challenges with the business model, the support structure, or just the franchisor's relationship with its network. Definitely something to probe.
And closely related, item 20. Historical business failures, ownership transfers, and franchise agreement terminations. This also seems incredibly telling about the health of the system.
Absolutely. Item 20 is often one of the most revealing sections in the FDD. It provides tables detailing the number of franchise agreements terminated, non-renewed, or transferred, as well as units that just ceased operations for other reasons over the past 3 fiscal years.
So you see how many people are leaving the system.
Exactly. And it also lists contact information for current franchisees and, crucially, those who have left the system recently. You need to analyze the churn rate. Is a significant percentage of units leaving the system each year? If so, why are they leaving?
Good question.
Are terminations initiated by the franchisor? And for what reasons? Are franchisees selling because they're successful or because they're trying to get out? A high rate of failures or franchisor-initiated terminations can indicate problems with franchisee selection, training, support, the business model's profitability, or maybe a franchisor that is overly aggressive in enforcing compliance.
What about ownership changes of the franchisor itself?
That's in there too. If the ownership of the franchisor company itself has changed hands frequently, that can also indicate instability or differing strategic directions over time, which can certainly impact franchisees. This item requires careful analysis and, most importantly, validation through speaking with current and former franchisees listed right there in item 20.
Item 21. Audited financial statements for the franchisor company for the previous 3 years. What does this tell you about the system you might join?
Okay, important distinction here. These are the financials of the franchisor, the company selling the franchises, not necessarily the financial performance of individual franchise units. That might be in item 19, which we'll get to.
So this is about the mothership's health.
Exactly. You're assessing the franchisor's financial health and stability. Are they profitable? Is their revenue primarily from selling new franchises or from ongoing royalties and fees from existing ones?
Why does that matter?
Well, a heavy reliance on initial franchise fees can be a concern. It might suggest a focus on selling rather than supporting the existing network. Do they have sufficient cash reserves? Are they investing back into the system? Things like technology, support staff, marketing. You need to ensure the franchisor is financially sound and has the resources to fulfill their obligations to you and the rest of the system.
And you look at trends over the 3 years.
Yes, definitely. Is their revenue growing? Are their expenses managed? Are they getting stronger or weaker financially? It gives you a picture of their sustainability.
Okay, item 19, financial performance representation, often called an earnings claim. The source notes this is optional for franchisors. They don't have to include this.
That's correct. The FTC does not mandate that franchisors provide any data on the financial performance of their franchisees. If a franchisor chooses to include an item 19, it must have a reasonable basis and be presented in a specific format.
What does it usually show if they do include it?
It typically provides aggregated data like average or median gross sales, sometimes cost percentages, or maybe even profit figures for units within the system. Often it's broken down by factors like how long the units have been open, geographic location, or size.
The guide says if included, this can be a real time saver.
How so? It can because it provides a starting point, some benchmark data directly from the franchisor about potential unit performance. It allows for an initial assessment of whether the potential economics of the business could align with your financial goals that you established way back in your personal model.
But, and this is a crucial point, the source author, George Knauf, stresses repeatedly, given his role as a consultant focused purely on the process and finding the right fit, he doesn't make claims himself.
Absolutely. This is critical. The guide is emphatic. Even if it is included in the FDD, it is still imperative that you discuss this subject with franchisees during your fact-finding calls and visits.
So don't just take the item 19 number and run with it.
Definitely not. George Knauf, in his capacity as a consultant focused on guiding your investigation process rather than making sales claims, highlights that while item 19 provides the franchisor's data based on their methodology, the indispensable insight comes from the people actually operating the businesses day to day.
Franchisees on the ground.
Exactly. You must validate and deepen your understanding of potential earnings directly with existing franchisees. Item 19 is a reference point, maybe a starting point, but franchise validation is the true source of ground-level financial reality. You absolutely have to talk to them about money.
Hey, that's a deep dive into the FDD. It sounds like a beast. What's the action step after digesting all this information?
The guide advises you to carefully review the FDD and note any questions or issues that the material raises. And this isn't a quick skim. You'll likely read it multiple times, cross-referencing sections.
I have lots of notes.
Absolutely. Create a detailed list of every single question, ambiguity, or potential concern that arises. This list will be your agenda for subsequent steps, particularly your conversations with the franchisor and, crucially, with existing franchisees.
And this is where bringing in expert advisors is recommended.
Highly recommended, yes. The source explicitly states you may also choose to involve outside advisors to review material you are not familiar with. And there's a very specific, critical piece of advice here that you absolutely cannot overlook.
Which is the type of legal counsel.
Exactly. The guide strongly recommends hiring a dedicated franchise attorney, emphasizing not just your family attorney or a general business lawyer you might use for other things.
Why is that specialization so vital when reviewing the FDD and the eventual franchise agreement? They're just contracts, right?
Well, yes and no. Franchise law is a highly specialized and complex area. A dedicated franchise attorney spends their career working with these specific documents and understanding the unique regulatory framework and relationship dynamics inherent in franchising.
So they know what to look for.
They are, as the guide puts it, far better prepared to identify potential pitfalls, unfair clauses, state-specific requirements, and areas of concern within the FDD and the franchise agreement that a general attorney might simply miss.
Because they've seen hundreds of these.
Exactly. They understand the nuances of the franchisor-franchise relationship, the common areas of dispute, and what constitutes a reasonable or unreasonable contract term in the franchise world. This is not the document to get generic legal advice on. You need an expert who understands the franchise relationship inside and out to ensure you understand the legal implications of what you're potentially signing.
That distinction is incredibly important. Investing in the right legal expertise here is really investing in protecting your future business. So you've dissected the FDD, compiled your questions, and perhaps had a franchise attorney review it. The FDD gives you the franchisor's mandated disclosures and their perspective. But where do you find out what it's really like to be part of that system?
That brings us to step 3, franchise SIGs, calls, and visits. And the guide is unequivocal about the importance of this step, describing it as the most valuable source of information on any franchise system.
Most valuable, more than the FDD.
Arguably, yes, because they are the ones in the trenches, living the experience day after day. They've gone through the initial training, navigated the opening process, dealt with suppliers, interacted with the franchisor's support staff, implemented the marketing programs, managed the P&L.
They know the reality.
They understand the operational realities, the system's strengths and weaknesses, and the true nature of the franchisor-franchise relationship in practice, not just on paper. They've walked the path you are considering walking.
And it's not enough to just casually chat with 1 or 2 people from the list provided in item 20, is it? You need more.
Absolutely not. The guide stresses you need to plan on calling and, if possible, visiting a number of existing franchisees. The key is speaking with a sufficient number, and that number might vary, but it's certainly more than 2 or 3 to genuinely get a sense of the prevailing attitudes within the system.
How do you pick who to call?
Don't just call the franchisees closest to you or the first few names on the list. Try to select a diverse group, some who have been in the system for a short time, and some who are veterans, potentially some who are nearby and some who are further away, maybe even trying to connect with units of different sizes or in different types of locations if that's relevant to the business. Get a cross-section.
Let's dig into this prevailing attitude concept. The guide makes a strong point about it. What does that mean?
It does, and it's incredibly insightful. The guide posits that whatever you find the prevailing attitude of the existing franchisees on any issue to be, it would almost certainly be your attitude on the issue as well if you decide to become a franchisee.
Wow, really? That direct a correlation.
That's the assertion. If the majority of franchisees express satisfaction with the support, belief in the marketing, and a positive relationship with the franchisor, chances are you'll experience something similar. Conversely, if you consistently hear frustration about a particular area, say, the effectiveness of the National Marketing Fund, responsiveness of the support team, or challenges with a specific operational process that is likely to be your reality and your frustration point too, should you join.
So you're basically getting a preview of your own future experience.
In a way, yes, you are effectively interviewing your potential future peer group and getting a read on the system's pulse, its culture, its functional reality.
And a specific, perhaps surprising, piece of advice is to actively try to find an unhappy franchisee. Why is seeking out discontent so important? It seems counterintuitive.
This is a critical strategy for understanding the potential downsides and challenges within the system. The guide explicitly says it is important to try to find an unhappy franchisee. It's not about wallowing in negativity or looking for dirt. It's about gaining a balanced perspective and, most importantly, understanding why they are unhappy. What specific issues are they facing? What are their complaints about the system, the franchisor, or the business model?
And how does that help you decide?
Well, if their reasons for unhappiness stem from things you feel you could manage, or maybe things outside the franchisor's control, like unique local market conditions, or perhaps relate to expectations that don't align with yours, then maybe their situation isn't a red flag for you.
But
if their struggles resonate deeply with you, if their reasons for unhappiness sound like things you anticipate struggling with or that directly contradict your personal model, then, as the guide states, this is probably not the right franchise for you. Hearing from someone who is struggling helps you understand the potential worst-case scenarios and assess your own resilience and fit in challenging circumstances. It's a vital reality check.
that's a powerful way to use feedback, positive or negative, to assess your personal fit. So when you're on these crucial calls and visits with existing franchisees, what are the principal areas you need to investigate? Let's go deeper than just the bullet points in the outline.
All right, first, training programs. Don't just ask if they got training. That's a yes/no question.
Read more detail.
Ask, how long was it? What was the format, classroom, online, hands-on in a real unit? Was it sufficient to prepare them for opening and actually running the business day to day? What were its strengths? What were its weaknesses? Were there any critical areas not covered that they wish had been? Did they feel confident and capable after completing it, or were they scrambling?
Good questions. Next, opening support.
That seems like a really stressful time.
It often is. This is the critical phase between signing the agreement and opening your doors. Ask about the franchisor's assistance with site selection. How thorough was it? Did they just give you demographics or actually help evaluate specific locations?
What about the lease? Lease negotiation, did they provide guidance or recommend legal review? Construction and build-out, was the process smooth, or were there delays and cost overruns? Financing, did the franchisor provide resources, introductions, or connections? Permits and licenses, how much help was provided navigating the local bureaucracy?
And were they responsive?
Crucially, yes. Were the franchisor's representatives responsive and helpful during this often stressful period? Did they stick to the timeline and budget projections provided back in the FBD? You want to understand if the franchisor has a well-oiled, supportive process for getting new units open efficiently.
What about once you're open, ongoing support? What does that really mean?
Right, once they're open, what's the day-to-day support actually like? Are the operations manuals accessible, clear, and useful, or do they just sit on a shelf? How responsive is the support staff, the field consultants, or help desk when issues arise?
Is there someone specific to call?
Yeah. Is there a dedicated point of contact, or do they just call a general 1-800 number and hope for the best? Do they receive regular coaching, site visits, or performance reviews from the franchisor? Are there peer support networks or franchise advisory councils facilitated by the franchisor?
And the feeling behind it.
Do they feel the franchisor is genuinely invested in their ongoing success? Is the support reactive, just solving problems when they arise? Or is it proactive, actually helping them improve performance and profitability?
Marketing programs.
Yeah.
The guide highlights this as a common area for complaint. Why do you think that is?
Often because the National Marketing Fund is a collective pool of money contributed by all franchisees, usually a percentage of their sales, and disagreements can easily arise over how that money is spent.
Like, is it benefiting my store?
Exactly. Ask franchisees. Are they happy with the national marketing campaigns? Do they feel the funds are being used effectively to drive customers to their specific location or territory? Do they feel they get a good return on their marketing contributions? Is there sufficient local marketing support or guidance provided? What marketing initiatives actually work best for them on the ground?
So you can see if the strategy actually works locally.
Right. Understanding this can reveal if the franchisor's marketing strategy is effective on the ground, and if franchisees feel their mandatory contributions are well spent. It's often a friction point.
Purchasing power, called one of the biggest advantages. How do you check that?
This is where the scale of the franchise system should benefit you directly through lower costs. Ask franchisees, does the franchisor leverage the size of the network to negotiate significant discounts on necessary supplies, inventory, or equipment?
Compared to going it alone.
Precisely. Are they required to purchase from specific approved suppliers? And if so, are the prices genuinely competitive? Do they feel they are getting a real cost advantage compared to what they could negotiate as an independent business doing the same thing? The guide notes that these collective purchasing savings could offset much of the fee cost associated with being a franchisee, so try to quantify this if possible. Ask them for examples.
Franchisor-franchise relations.
Yeah.
This sounds less tangible, maybe harder to pin down, but probably very important for a long-term partnership.
It's absolutely crucial. You're potentially signing up for a 10 or 20-year relationship. Ask about the overall relationship dynamic. Do franchisees feel the franchisor listens to their feedback? Is there an open line of communication? Is there a formal franchisee advisory council? And does the franchisor actually listen to it?
Do they trust the leaders?
Yes. Do they trust the franchisor's leadership and strategic direction? Are the franchisor's stated values evident in their day-to-day interactions? Is there a sense of partnership, or does it feel more hierarchical, maybe even adversarial sometimes? This gives you a sense of the culture and whether you'd feel comfortable and respected within that relationship for the long haul.
Okay. Item 7, investment. You mentioned using franchisees' calls to narrow the FDD's range. How specific should you get here?
Get granular. Don't just ask if the FDD range was accurate. Ask them what their actual total initial investment was, soup to nuts. Did it fall within the FDD's estimated range, or was it higher?
Find out about surprises.
Yes. Were there significant unexpected costs? What were the biggest cost drivers in their specific case? And importantly, how much working capital did they actually need to get through the initial ramp-up phase before the business was self-sufficient or cash flow positive? Gather these figures from multiple franchisees to get a reasonable and conservative estimate, as the guide says, of the capital you will likely need. This is often where the reality differs most from the FDD's broad estimate.
And finally, the one everyone is often most eager, maybe nervous, to ask about: earnings.
Absolutely critical, as the guide states. This is where you get the ground truth on the financial viability from the people living it. And remember, since a consultant like George Knauf focuses on the process and helps you find your right fit rather than making earnings claims himself, the guide strongly emphasizes that you must obtain a strong sense of just where the average unit is in terms of earnings, directly from existing franchisees. It's your job to find this out.
So what are the specific direct questions you should ask about earnings? How do you phrase it?
The guide lists these key questions. How much money does the typical unit make given a specified length of time in business? You need to frame this based on their tenure. Maybe ask about performance after year 1, year 2, year 5. Get specifics.
What else?
How soon does a typical unit start making money after opening? This gets at the ramp-up period to profitability. Is it 6 months? A year? Longer? And importantly, what is the range of answers for these questions?
Why the range?
You need to understand the variability. Is everyone making roughly the same amount? Or is there a huge disparity between the top performers and the bottom performers? If there is a big range, what factors seem to drive success? Location, owner involvement, specific skills, or a lack thereof?
And the guide offers a practical tip for broaching this often sensitive subject. Don't just jump into it.
Right. The advice is to bring up earnings as the last point in your conversation. Spend time first building rapport by discussing their training experience, the opening process, the ongoing support, their relationship with the franchisor, their thoughts on marketing, all the stuff we discovered.
Show you're serious first.
Exactly. Once they see you've done your homework, are a serious candidate, and understand the business nuances, they're much more likely to feel comfortable sharing financial information. They've been in your shoes, after all, and they understand why you need this critical data. Asking about money right off the bat can definitely shut down the conversation.
And the guide is incredibly firm on the necessity of getting this information. What if you can't get clear answers?
It's non-negotiable. The guide states, if you are simply not able to determine these answers to your satisfaction in your research, do not settle. You absolutely need a realistic understanding of the potential earnings. If franchisees are consistently cagey, or if you talk to several and just can't get a clear picture, you should tell the franchisor of the problem and that you cannot proceed unless you have these answers.
Really draw a line in the sand.
Yes. This reinforces that understanding potential earnings is a prerequisite for you moving forward. If the information isn't accessible through franchise validation, the most reliable source, it's a major red flag about transparency and potentially about the viability itself. You have to be prepared to walk away if you can't get this picture.
Okay, you've done the deep dive with the people on the front lines, gather that invaluable intel. What's the next step in verifying the system structure?
That moves us to step 4, review the system documentation. This refers to the written blueprints of the franchise, the operational manuals, the training materials, the marketing guides, maybe technology system descriptions, basically, the documented how-to for running the business according to their specific model.
Why is reviewing this documentation important, especially if you've already talked to franchisees about how things work?
Because the quality and comprehensiveness of the documentation reflect the professionalism and maturity of the franchise system itself. A strong franchise company, the guide notes, will have documented their systems in a concise and easy-to-use format.
So, good manuals mean a good system.
It indicates that the franchisor has taken the time and effort to codify their successful methodology, making it replicable and teachable. It shows they have a structured approach to every aspect of the business, not just making it up as they go along.
You mentioned you likely won't get the full manuals up front. They're secret sauce.
Correct. The detailed operational manuals are usually considered confidential and part of the proprietary system you gain access to only after you become a franchisee. However, the guide says the franchisor can certainly provide you with the table of contents or index of their manuals.
And what does reviewing just the table of contents tell you? Seems a bit thin.
It's more revealing than you might think. First, it confirms that the documentation actually exists. Second, and more importantly, it shows the scope of coverage of all major business factors. Look at the breadth and depth of topics covered in the index.
Like what?
Are there detailed sections or entire manuals for every critical function day-to-day operations, specific procedures, staff training protocols, marketing implementation guides, accounting procedures, customer service standards, technology usage guides. Does it appear comprehensive enough to guide someone, potentially with limited prior experience in this specific industry, through successfully running the business according to their system?
So the organization matters.
The sheer volume and organization of the documentation can be telling. A thin, poorly organized index might suggest a system that is less developed or relies too heavily on ad hoc support rather than clearly defined, documented procedures. It gives you a sense of their internal structure and preparedness.
So it's about verifying that the structure exists on paper to support the system the franchisees are operating within. Okay, you've reviewed the documentation scope, talked to the people following it or not, and analyzed the official disclosures. Now it's time to meet the architects and managers of the system, right?
Step 5. Meet the franchisor. At this stage, usually later in the process, you will have personal interactions with key personnel from the franchise company. This might take various forms: individual virtual calls, maybe local meetings with regional support staff, or often requiring travel to their headquarters for a dedicated event.
And these headquarters visits are often called discovery days, right? I've heard that term.
Yes, Discovery Day is a common term for that. Many franchisors host these structured events, usually at their main office, where prospective franchisees can meet key department heads and executives, get a deeper feel for the company culture, maybe tour the facilities, and ask questions in person.
It's like a final showcase.
In a way, yes. It's an efficient way for both parties, you and the franchisor team, to spend concentrated time together before a final decision is made.
Who should you prioritize meeting during this phase? Is it all about getting face time with the president or CEO?
Well, meeting the top executive is certainly informative. It gives you a sense of the company's overall vision and leadership style. However, the guide advises you to particularly focus on meeting the people you will be working most closely with once you become a franchisee.
Who would that typically be?
These are typically the director of operations, the head of training, the marketing director, or perhaps your assigned franchise business coach or field support liaison, the people responsible for your direct support.
Why focus on the support team rather than just the senior leadership? Seems like you'd want to impress the boss.
Because these are the individuals who will directly impact your day-to-day experience and, frankly, your long-term success much more than the CEO probably will. They are the ones providing the ongoing training refreshers, answering your urgent operational questions, guiding your local marketing efforts, and helping you navigate challenges as they arise.
So you need to know if you can work with them.
Exactly. You need to form an opinion about their competence, and just as importantly, assess whether you feel you can build a productive, positive working relationship with them. Do they seem knowledgeable, experienced, supportive, and genuinely invested in franchise success? Do their communication styles and personalities seem compatible with yours? Your relationship with the support team will likely be far more frequent and critical than your interactions with the C-suite.
And this meeting, or discovery day, is essentially your final opportunity to tie up any loose ends from your investigation. Get those last questions answered.
Exactly. Use these meetings, whether they're virtual or in person, to address any remaining questions you jotted down, clarify any ambiguities from the FDD review, follow up on issues or concerns raised by the franchisees you spoke with, or delve deeper into specific aspects of the system documentation you reviewed. This is your chance to look the people who run the system in the eye, or, via screen, and get your final questions answered before you have to make that big decision.
All right, you've navigated the entire process. You've done the internal work. You've reviewed the official documents with expert legal help. You've talked to the people living the reality, the good and maybe the bad. You've checked the blueprints, and you've met the team. You've completed the investigation. Seems like a lot.
Which leads, finally, to step 6, make a decision. The guide estimates that if you've been diligent and followed these steps methodically, the entire process should take about 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks. That feels incredibly efficient for such a significant decision. But I suppose the structured, step-by-step nature makes it possible to process a lot of information relatively quickly.
It does. The process is designed to gather and analyze information methodically, not drag on forever. By this point, if you've done the work, you have asked all your critical questions, you've gathered the necessary information from diverse sources, the franchisor's own disclosures, the invaluable validation from existing franchisees, the documented systems, and direct interaction with the team. You should have what you need.
And the outcome, according to the source, is quite definitive. No, maybe.
That's what the guide suggests. It states, It either is or it isn't, and you'll know which it is. If you've truly engaged with the process and gathered sufficient validated information, the answer should become clear. The gray areas should have resolved into either a green light or a red one.
How do you arrive at that clear conclusion? What's the final check?
You return to where you started, in a way. You take that personal model you built at the very beginning of this journey, your needs, goals, financial capacity, desired lifestyle, skills, risk tolerance.
Right, your personal blueprint.
Exactly. You evaluate the franchise opportunity, everything you've learned about the business model, the training, the support, the culture, the relationship dynamics, the real financial requirements, and the reality experienced by current owners. You evaluate all of that against your predefined criteria. Does this opportunity truly align with what you want and need in a business and a business partnership?
And the final, absolutely crucial piece of advice from the source, the bottom line.
Don't settle. The guide is very, very firm on this. If, after completing your thorough investigation and comparing it against your personal model, the company meets all your essential criteria, the business aligns with your interests and skills, the financial requirements are genuinely within your means, the support seems robust and reliable, the culture feels like a good fit, and the earnings potential appears realistic based on franchise validation, not just hopes,
Then you go for it.
then you can confidently proceed. But, and this is the key, if there are significant mismatches, unresolved red flags from the FDD or those franchisor calls, major concerns about the franchisor relationship, or if it simply doesn't feel like the right fit based on your personal criteria, then you must eliminate it and go to the next one.
This really circles back to that core concept of mutual elimination we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not about convincing yourself or being convinced by a salesperson. It's about finding the right alignment.
Right.
And being disciplined enough to walk away if it's not there, even if you've invested time.
Exactly. Trusting the process you've just completed, respecting your own personal model, and having the discipline to say no to a potentially wrong fit is arguably the most important part of making the right long-term decision for yourself. Don't fall in love with the idea if the facts don't support it.
So we've charted the course through this essential investigation process, following the guide from George Knauf, starting with that vital self-evaluation and understanding track record, moving through the initial information exchange and the deep dive into the crucial FDD with, ideally, expert legal counsel.
A dedicated franchise attorney.
Right, a dedicated franchise attorney. Then undertaking the indispensable task of calling and visiting multiple existing franchisees, really feeling the pulse of the system. Then reviewing the operational blueprints, meeting the key people at the franchisor, and finally, arriving at that informed decision point.
It's a comprehensive, structured path designed to move you beyond the superficial marketing gloss and into the operational and financial realities of a franchise system before you commit.
And the key takeaways we really want you, the listener, to walk away with. The power of the mutual elimination mindset, remember, it's a two-way street, and finding reasons not to proceed is just as valuable, maybe more valuable, than finding reasons to.
Absolutely. And the unparalleled, non-negotiable importance of talking to a sufficient number of existing franchisees. Getting that sense of the prevailing attitude, understanding the reality of support and marketing, getting realistic insights into the actual investment and potential earnings, and crucially understanding the potential challenges by talking to unhappy franchisees. That validation step is paramount. You cannot skip it or skimp on it.
And remember that vital distinction when seeking professional help. If you need assistance, understand the complexities of the FDD and the binding franchise agreement, seek out a dedicated franchise attorney. Their specialized knowledge of franchise law makes them far better equipped to provide the critical advice you need than a general lawyer. Don't cut corners there.
Indeed. And reinforcing that point about earnings, while the FDD may or may not contain performance data in Item 19, given that a consultant like George Knauf focuses on guiding your investigation process and doesn't make earnings claims himself, you must make it a priority to obtain a strong sense of realistic unit performance directly from the existing franchisees you interview. It's your responsibility in this process to get that ground-level financial picture. Don't rely on the franchisor for that exclusively.
This entire process, as laid out in the guide, is fundamentally about empowering you. It provides a robust framework to approach one of the most significant financial and career decisions you might make, reducing the risk of emotional decisions or falling for a polished sales pitch, and replacing it with a choice based on verified information and clear alignment with your own goals.
It allows you to systematically peel back the layers, understand the realities, good and bad, and determine if a specific franchise system is truly a good fit for you and your definition of success.
And as you dedicate yourself to this rigorous investigation, meticulously following these steps, you're gaining insights that go beyond just the potential business opportunity itself. This journey also holds a mirror up to you, doesn't it?
How so? What do you mean?
Well, think about what the process demands of you. Patience, serious attention to detail, the discipline to ask sometimes uncomfortable questions, the ability to synthesize and analyze diverse information, and maybe the courage to potentially walk away, even after investing significant time and effort. What does going through this reveal about your own tolerance for risk, about your comfort level with direct communication when seeking critical information, about how you assess relationships and partnerships, which is what a franchise truly is at its core?
Ah, interesting point.
The investigation process isn't solely about discovering the right business. It can be a profound process of discovering more about yourself as a future business owner and partner. What kind of partner will you be in this mutual relationship? Something to think about.